Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at signing from our past couple of days, a few very interesting news updates, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Ducks, Maple Leafs, Minnesota Wild, and Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll go to all the updates from our past couple of days coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End to End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. So once again, another news and rumor video here to discuss. To start off with, as per usual, look at some signings from our past couple of days. Only one signing from our past few days, so we'll touch on it. And it was in the Colorado Avalanche organization. UFA Kiviranta, who had spent the past couple seasons in the Avalanche organization as a solid bomb six forward, left as a UFA in the offseason, wasn't able to get a contract elsewhere, so he winds up going back to Colorado. The Avalanche signed Kiviranta to a one-year, $1.25 million deal. It's not really bad there for Kiviranta. He gets a little bit of a pay bump from last year. He's 29 years old. He's a left winger. He can play third or fourth line minutes, and for an Avalanche team that is definitely lacking some depth up front, that's not a bad deal there for the Avalanche. He had 16 goals and 23 points in 79 games last year, so he had above 15 plus goals. That's not too bad there for the Avalanche. And it was the first time Kiviranta had broken the 20-point plateau. So if Kiviranta plays the bottom 6 minutes, can put up between 10 and 15 goals next year, between like 20-25 points again, I think this is a winner of a deal there for the Avalanche. So 1.25 might be a little bit expensive given where the Avalanche current cap situation is right now. But I mean, they need some bottom six forward help, and Kiviranta is going to provide that. So very interesting note there. But the Avalanche have signed Joel Kiviranta to a new deal, and it's going to be a very interesting situation to watch out there for the Avalanche. But that's the only sign for our past couple of days is the Avalanche bring back UFA Kiviranta, who left as a UFA. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to 5 news updates we got from our past couple of days. So first, regarding a retirement, Kyle Clifford, the longtime Los Angeles player, also played a whole bunch of seasons in Toronto, has been basically an AHL level player over the past couple of seasons, has officially retired from the NHL. So very interesting note there. Clifford wound up finishing his career with 66 goals, 78 assists, 144 points in 753 games. I think he was part of both Los Angeles Kings Cup wins back in 2012 and 2014. I might be wrong about that. It might have just been one, but I know Clifford was part of the LA Kings team who won the Stanley Cup. So he was a very interesting player. He was a key piece on those teams. He was a solid bottom six forward for most of his career, especially in Toronto after the Jack Campbell trade. He really found a home in Toronto. The past couple of seasons, he's been an AHL level player, so it doesn't come as much surprise to me that he retires. But very interesting note there. He didn't get a whole bunch of points during his NHL level tenure, but he almost got up to 800 games played. Like, he was a really solid bottom six key fit for both the Leafs and the Kings. So very interesting note there. But Kyle Clifford has officially retired from the NHL. Next, going over to Keith Kinkaid. According to a couple of recent reports, Kinkaid is trying to make a comeback to a higher level of pro level play. So he's not a guy who went overseas for a couple seasons to try and make an NHL level comeback. Kinkaid has been on one-year deals over the past couple seasons, but this past year played entirely in the ECHL. Kinkaid, a couple of years back, was a solid backup goaltender, tandem goaltender, worked really well for teams like New Jersey. He was really big in New Jersey at one point. The Rangers, I think it was in Boston at one point. There were a couple of other teams too. So Kinkaid had a lot of really interesting options, but the past couple of seasons been an AHL and even ECHL level player. So he wants to try and make a comeback to a high level play. My guess would be he wants to sign an NHL contract with a team where he can be a clear-cut third stringer and push for a backup role on a team. So I'm not sure what teams will be interested in trying to target older type guy like Keith Kinkaid, because I think he's in his late 30s at this point. But still, very interesting to note that Keith Kinkaid will be trying to make a comeback to play as either a AHL level starter or an NHL backup, so we shall see what happens there. Next, going over to the New Jersey Devils. Apparently, the New Jersey Devils and Luke Hughes have agreed on some sort of parameters of a new deal. At this current point in time, the RFA has not signed a new extension, but the Devils and Luke Hughes, according to recent reports, have agreed that they want to go long-term on this upcoming deal. They do not want a bridge deal, so that makes sense. Like, if Luke Hughes starts to take off, just like his brothers did over the past while, like that contract's going to go up there to the point where where I think if he got like a 3-year bridge deal, he could be making like $10-11 million on his next contract. But if they sign him to like a 6-7 year deal right now, like $8 to $9 million, I won't be too surprised about that. I'm not sure if Hughes is even an $8 to $9 million defenseman at this point in time. They still have some work to go on, but it definitely does seem like a 2 to 3 year bridge deal, which is what some people have speculated could wind up happening if they can't come to terms on a long-term deal. Is not what the Devils or Luke Hughes wants on a new deal, so we shall wait and see on that, but keep your eye on the Devils and Luke Hughes. Next, going over to Callum Ritchie. Apparently, according to GM Matthew Darsh, Callum Ritchie will have every opportunity to make the NHL roster this year. According to a recent article that was written, I think, or a radio interview, Darsh mentioned that if Callum Ritchie outperforms some of these other players during training camp, he will be willing to sacrifice one of the other maybe older type players, potentially putting them on waivers to give Callum Ritchie a spot. And I think that's a smart move there. The Islanders are a team in transition. They're an older team, which now has a really solid and bright young future. I still think this team's not going to be a playoff team this year, and I think getting some more of their younger players involved this year will be smart. I think Callum Ritchie, if he does a really good training camp, could be a solid second or third line center on the Islanders team. So we'll have to wait and see on that. No guarantees that Callum Ritchie does make it, but Darsh does say that he is open to giving Ritchie every opportunity to make the NHL level, so we shall wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to Matthew Tkachuk. Apparently, according to a recent report, I think it was from Greg Wyshynski, it might have been someone else, if Matthew Tkachuk gets the surgery for his current injury that's going to keep him out for at least a couple of months in the Florida Panthers organization, he could be out 2 to 3 months, so that's not too bad there. It's definitely going to be a big blow for the Florida Panthers, but he's probably only going to miss October, November, maybe December too, like we said. Probably be better by the time the Olympics hits, so that would be very interesting to note there. But at this point in time, it seems like Tkachuk's going to miss a couple of months, so if he does wind up going the surgery direction instead of just trying to let it heal, it seems like he will be out for at least a couple months, probably about 2 to 3, so very interesting note there. But those are all the injury updates from the past couple of days. News updates, as Clifford's retired, Kinkaid's trying to make a comeback to either be an AHL starter or NHL level backup. Devils and Luke Hughes do not want a bridge deal. Callum Ritchie will have a legit shot to make the NHL this year, and Tkachuk could be out 2 to 3 months if he gets surgery, so very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So going over to a couple of trade rumors, got a couple of things to talk about here. First, in the Minnesota Wild organization, Marco D'Amico was looking at the Marco Rossi situation, which is at this point in time really, really bad. Like, these two sides are not talking. There's been no offer sheet discussions. A trade seems to be dwindling the longer this stalemate drags out. So at this point in time, it seems like the most likely scenario, in my opinion and a couple of other people's, is that it probably would be a short-term deal, 2 to 3 year deal that wouldn't inhibit a trade if Rossi still wanted to be dealt, but would also at least get him under contract for the start of the season. According to Marco D'Amico, he was talking about Rossi, and he says he could see Rossi maybe getting a similar contract to Cole Perfetti. Now, Perfetti last offseason signed a 2-year contract with the AV of $3.25 million. Now, I don't think Rossi's going to be willing to go that low, but I could see a 2 to 3 year bridge deal be somewhat similar to what the Wild and Rossi eventually wind up hooking up on. I think a 2-year deal, maybe around the $4 to $5 million mark, would be a little bit more smarter for both Rossi and the Wild. And if he's not working out overly well, they can trade him at the trade deadline, or maybe next offseason, or if he starts really going well, maybe next year in the summer, they wind up signing him to an extension. Like, I could see that being a case there for Minnesota Wild. I do think Rossi at this point in time is a little bit better than Perfetti, and I don't think he'll get as low of an AAV as Perfetti has at 3.25, but I definitely could see similar things happen with Minnesota and Marco Rossi, because I definitely think a 2-year deal between like $4 or $5 million might be a smart move there from the Minnesota Wild. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on the Minnesota Wild, as at this point, with all the situations going on right now with Minnesota, the smart move might just be to sign Rossi to a small bridge deal, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to Chris Johnston, he was talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he says that the Leafs could still move 2 of 3 of Yarncroke, Robertson, and Kampf before the season starts. So very interesting out there. We know the Leafs are a team who is heavily linked to Jack Roslovic, who's probably going to want a 1 to 2 year deal at around $3 to $4 million, and the Leafs don't have that cap space plus roster space with the current group of guys they have on their roster, so they're going to have to make some sort of move. Like, I expect at least least one of these guys to get moved. Not even with the Roslovic edition or anything like that. One of these guys I think has to get moved for start of the season. Even if Roslovic wasn't to get dealt, like I definitely think whether it be Järnkrok, Robertson, Kampf. I think Robertson at this point has the most value than Järnkrok, than Kampf. Like the Kampf contract's not overly good. Järnkrok's coming off of an injury. Robertson's at least younger on a cheap contract and still has top 9 potential. So we shall wait and see on this. Chris Johnston definitely thinks there's a very good chance that if the Leafs do go after Jack Roslovic, that 2 of 3 of these guys, whether that be Järnkrok and Kampf or Järnkrok and Robertson or Robertson and Kampf, could definitely get moved before the start of the season. So we will have to wait and see on that. Like I said, I definitely think at least one of these guys are getting moved. And if they are going to try and sign Jack Roslovic, I could definitely see 2 of them be moved. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to Josh Yohe, he was talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins in The Athletic, and he says that the thing that the Pittsburgh Penguins want for Rust and Rakell in a trade are NHL level players that are 22 years old or younger. So very interesting note there. So they want established NHL level players who they can get. So Rust and Rakell are 2 names that have been linked heavily. I think a lot of speculation will start to pick up again closer to the start of training camp. I think that's a very likely possibility. So with that in mind, like I'm not exactly sure who they'll try and acquire. Like if you look at Columbus, I think a guy that jumps out will be a guy like Igor Chinnikov. If Buffalo's trying to acquire them, a guy like Peyton Krebs makes some sense. There are a couple of other guys too. Like I'm pretty sure there's a couple of other teams out there who would have some major interest in adding a top 6 forward, like a Rust or Rakell, who probably do have some solid NHL level players who are between 22 and 21 years old. So we shall wait and see on that. Like Buffalo and Columbus are just a few teams that come to mind, but I'm pretty sure there's a couple of other teams who have some major interest in Rust or Rakell who could have the things that the Pittsburgh Penguins want. But apparently, according to Josh Yohe, and I would completely agree with this, the Pittsburgh Penguins' main goal in a Rust or Rakell trade to get back would be a younger or around 22-year-old player who's already established at the NHL level. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But if the Penguins are to move Rust or Rakell, expect that to be part of a trade package. And lastly, going over to James Murphy, who was talking with the Anaheim Ducks, and he says that the Ducks' price for Mason McTavish is extremely high. He says that the Penguins want to start with, which means there could be a couple of other smaller things, but they want at least a top 4 young right shot defenseman in exchange for Mason McTavish. That would be very interesting. I'm not sure if any of these teams who we've been mentioning have the assets to pull it off. Like I know Carolina's come up to some extent to try and get McTavish. Like if they want a McTavish, they don't really have that top 4 right shot defenseman. Like they have a guy like Keandre Miller who they just traded for. Jalen Chatfield I don't think is that top 4 defenseman that would really suit the Anaheim Ducks needs. Nick Ashin would be very interesting, but I just think the Carolina Hurricanes want to see what he does. If it's the Montreal Canadiens, the one guy that sticks out to me in my opinion would be David Reinbacher. Would you trade Reinbacher to get McTavish? Like I'm not sure, but I think that's probably what the Ducks would want. Like they're not moving Lane Hudson or King Gooley or any of those guys. And I feel like the Detroit Red Wings, who we recently just talked about, they don't have any solid top 4 defensemen besides guys like Sider and Evanson, who they are not moving at this point in time. My guess would be they would have to move one of their prospects, like a Wallander or a Buim or a Sandin Pellikka. Like that would be my guess. So we'll have to wait and see on that. I'm not sure if the Ducks really want a pure prospect in return for Mason McTavish. So that's like a couple of people that think maybe a bridge deal would be a little bit more easier to do than a trade. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But the Ducks have a high ask for Mason McTavish, and if they're going to keep to this asking price, I don't think any team is going to try and acquire McTavish. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. I love your guys' thoughts. What do you think about all we discussed here today? Do the Ducks move Mason McTavish if they only want a top 4 right shot defenseman who's on the younger side of things? Do you think the Penguins can get a 22-year-old or younger forward who's established at NHL level for Rust or Rakell? Do you think that the Leafs will move a couple of those 3 players you mentioned before the training camp starts? And do you think that Rossi could get a similar deal to Cole Perfetti? Definitely your thoughts on that, plus all the news updates and the signing from our past couple of days. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you'd like to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. I also do a blog, talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll link that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.